Buenos días, buenas tardes, mis estudiantes, mis amigos, ¿cómo están? ¿Están bien? ¿Están más o menos? ¿Están cansados? Hoy, ¿qué día es hoy? Hoy es lunes. ¿Cuál es la fecha de hoy? Creo que la fecha es el 30 de marzo, ¿verdad? Es el 30 de marzo. Tenemos clase hoy, lunes. También tenemos clase el miércoles, el 1 de abril. Y el viernes tenemos el examen número 2 de lecciones 9 y lecciones 10 de la clase de español. So what we're going to do today, mis amigos, is just to keep working on finishing up what we were working on with some preterite and imperfect stuff. There's going to be a new little concept today that's called the impersonal se. If you remember way back to the first chapter, we talked about reflexive things, right? Ella se despierta, él se ducha, se maquilla, all of those things that use that little word se. That se is going to make a comeback today. However, it's going to be used in a different role. So coming attractions of what's coming up. I will be talking more about the examen as we move forward as well. So in the next slide, and I cannot ever advance this dang slide. Technology has not been my friend. There it is. I have taken one of the verses out of the Bible verse that you guys read for today and filled in the verbs for today, and it was right from the middle of that story, from the story of El Padre Amoroso in the middle of the book of Lucas. So what I wanted to bring to your attention here is that I have mentioned before that when I read scripture passages, sometimes in Spanish, there's a word that sticks out to me that somehow makes that verse become a little bit more vibrant, more meaningful for me personally. In this particular verse, in this particular story, which anyway, the story is one of my most favorite. There's so many levels and so many layers of this story with the son, the wayward son, and coming back to his father. First of all, I love the fact that this story is entitled El Padre Amoroso. Do you see the word amor in there? There's my adjective, amoroso, the loving father. It's much more about the loving father than it is about the wayward son, because it's about how the father interacts with the son and also his older son as well. Anyway, in the middle of that story, there's a beautiful, beautiful verse that to me mirrors the verse that I had last week, which is Romans 5:8, which was when we were still sinners, cuando éramos pecadores, Cristo murió por nosotros. Christ died for us. In the middle of this story about the father, this earthly father, who shows that same unconditional love to his partner, his son, notice what's going on here. When we were still sinners, cuando todavía estaba lejos, when that son of his was still a long ways off, he was still far away, then there was an action. In the Romans 5:8 verse, it says, Cristo murió por nosotros. Here, su padre corrió. Notice it's an action that he took on behalf of his son, whom he loved. Hacia él, he ran towards him, lleno de amor, full of love, y lo recibió con abrazos y besos. He received him with hugs and kisses. Just a couple commentaries that I wanted to make on this, because I wanted just to pass on to you what I thought was some beautiful thoughts that I've heard in sermons about this parable over the years. And one of those is the first fact that when he was still far off, the whole fact that we were still sinners, that is an ongoing activity. Notice that the grammar in there indicates that as well. Estaba lejos, he was far off, he was far away. And then God was the one that chose to act. He sent his son to die in Romans 8. And in this place, in this particular story, he runs. I've heard several sermons about this, and where pastors put this in the cultural context of that day. And the fact that a man who was of this this father's stature and importance in society, the fact that he would run was demeaning to this guy. He shouldn't have, for any reason whatsoever, lowered himself enough to run. That would have required, first of all, that you see all these robes that these guys wore during that time in that culture. He would have had to have lifted up his robes, exposed his legs, his bare legs, and that was hugely humiliating in that time, in that culture. But yet the father did it. He took upon the humiliation. You're seeing the correlation, right, between what this father did and what our Father does for us and what Jesus did for us on the cross. Full of love, lleno de amor, y lo recibió con abrazos y besos. We had the verbs besar, we had besos. He received him with hugs and kisses. He demonstrated a physical love in front of everybody in this community, which you didn't do either. I've heard pastors talk about this, that again, a man of his importance in the community would never, ever lower himself to showing public displays of affection. Yet, this is what that father did. Again, he laid down his own importance. He humbled himself to do this for his son, whom he loved. Also, the fact that he was looking off, that was an ongoing thing, right? When he was still far away, cuando estaba lejos. Think about that for a second. When he was still far, his father saw him, ran to him, received him with hugs and kisses. That was an ongoing action. At that time, in that culture, it was very common for fathers whose children would do what this son did to him, asked for his inheritance. He went off. Everybody knew what he did. Everybody had heard reports of him living wildly. Super huge embarrassment to his father. It would have been completely acceptable in that culture for this father to just say, you know what, I'm done with him. Wash his hands, send him away, never think of him again, literally divorce his own child. I mean, that was a common and acceptable and probably expected practice in that day under this circumstance. But the fact that the father even saw him far away means, think about it, that he was looking for him. He had to have been watching for him. He had to have been still maintaining his relationship with that son in his heart for him to even care to look for him. So I think it's a beautiful picture of, it illustrates beautifully what was in Romans 5:8. We were still sinners, ongoing situation, imperfect idea, ongoing. Christ died, the Father ran and received his Son. I just include this Rembrandt painting, image of this painting as a beautiful picture of that as well, of that Father doing that exact act. Okay, moving on to the next slide. Okay, so speaking of imperfect and preterite, I wanted just to take a second to have you, in just a second after I give you the instructions, go ahead and pause the video. I would like you to take each sentence, come up with whether you think there should be, the blue verb that you see there should be an imperfect verb or a preterite verb. Keep in mind what we know about preterite and imperfect. If it's a preterite verb, it's an action, something happened. It's very timely at a very specific time that's done and it's over. If you choose imperfect, however, it's something that was ongoing, always happened, used to happen, it was happening, all of those ideas. So I'm going to pause it a second. You guys pause it as well. And then I'm going to come back on and I'm going to not go through all of these, but I'm going to give you a couple of those examples to see how well yours compares. Also, watch in each sentence. There's sometimes little tricks or little clues, I guess, not a trick, but a clue. Some of these are some of those new adverbs we just learned. In the first one, for example, de niña, as a child. In her childhood is the idea of that, de niña. In the third one, you see the phrase a menudo, one of the new adverbs as well. Often. What did Jose often do? when you hear the phrase a menudo, often, kind of like when you hear siempre, there's an element of repetition there. So that should be a big clue to you as you practice some of those. So I'm going to pause it, you pause it as well, see what you can come up with, and I'll give you a few of those in just a second. Oh, sorry. I'm going to pause. Okay, picking up where we left off. The first one, Ángela either sufrió o sufría una enfermedad de niña. I would be inclined to use sufría una enfermedad de niña. In her childhood, it was something that was ongoing in her childhood. However, I could also see that it could be Ángela sufrió una enfermedad de niña, something like chickenpox. Okay, she had it, it was done, it wasn't a chronic issue, it wasn't ongoing, but do you see how that could go either way depending on what you're referring to? De niña, I guess, could mean throughout her whole childhood. It can also mean just at a specific point in her childhood. So either one of those works in my mind for that one. The second one, yo tenía fiebre, that'd be my first choice. I had a fever. It was an ongoing thing. It was probably the reason that I went to the doctor in the first place. But yo tenía fiebre cuando el médico me tomó la temperatura. The doctor taking my temperature is a one and done kind of deal. So preterite for tomó, I would be inclined to use tenía fiebre for the first one, however, just because to me having a fever is something that was ongoing. Tuve fiebre to me is the idea of I spiked a fever. Suddenly it just came on. And I don't think I would have been at the doctor then. I would have still been at home to spike a fever, but I had a fever when he took my temperature. So more descriptive in nature, tenía fiebre, and then an action, me tomó la temperatura. Let's go down to the one that's, I don't have them numbered, but the one that says ella and then saber, que, she, something, saber, que ser alérgica, to be allergic, a los antibióticos, porque, and then to have a bad reaction last night. Look at the last night, anoche. That's a big clue, right? Anoche tells us a specific thing happened last night that she had this bad reaction. So, porque tuvo una mala reacción anoche. Undisputable. That one's got to be preterite because that's what happened last night. Now, let's back up. Let's go to the ser alérgica. She was allergic. No action. Okay? If I'm allergic to something, you see me have the reaction, that's an action. But the fact that I am allergic, that she was allergic, no action there. So, era alérgica, I would use that in the imperfect. Era alérgica a los antibióticos porque tuvo una mala reacción anoche. And then let's back up to the first one. She saber. Notice saber could mean she knew. If it's in the preterite, it changes meaning slightly to be she found out. If it's sabía, she always knew this. Supo, she found it out in the moment. I think we can all agree that she found this out at the point where she had this bad reaction. Had she always known she was allergic, she probably wouldn't have taken the antibióticos, right? So, ella supo que era alérgica a los antibióticos porque tuvo una mala reacción anoche. Okay, folks, I'm going to flip to the next slide. It's just going to have this more of the same. I'm going to try. There it is. And I'm nearing the end of my first 15 minutes on this video, so I'm going to pause it in a second here, and you guys, or I'm going to finish it in a second, but please pause it before I finish it. Give yourself a chance to go through a couple of those as well, and I will come back on the second video and we'll go over a few of those. Here we go. Pause, close it. Pause it before I close it. Here it goes. Now.